A federal women's prison plagued by a sex abuse scandal.
He would tell me that if he could come into my cell, that he would bend me over and with me.
Correctional officers targeting incarcerated women.
It's not often that a warden gets caught with a government computer and phone full of pornographic images of incarcerated people.
KTVU Fox 2 searching for answers.
Are you concerned that you may actually be going to prison? Just like the one you were warden at?
Investigating the abuse of power, manipulation, and sexual coercion.
Clearly, the prison was not being properly run. It had poor management.
Yes, we're going to be talking about FCI Dublin. This is a low-level women's prison that was recently shuttered, but I wanted you to hear this first.
Whistleblowers tried to pull back the curtain on toxic culture and cover-ups.
I've wanted to speak publicly long before this.
Rape and retaliation.
I was petrified. I was traumatized.
And the stories of abuse still exist today, years after 8 prison guards have been charged, and from federal oversight to the prison shutting down.
Right when we felt safe, the rug was completely pulled out from underneath us.
Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, welcome. Like I said, we're going to be talking about this story, the closure of FCI Dublin, the women's prison in California. But before I get into that, I just want to give a little warning here that this is obviously going to be a very disturbing video. We're going to be talking about very disgusting things, so I'm warning people in advance. It's not going to be very pleasant to hear about the things that happen to these women, and we're also going to hear from the director of the Bureau of Prisons, the current director, Colette Peters herself. But I want to first go to the actual news and give some background about what was happening at these facilities. This is from a Twitter user. Danian says, when sentenced to FCI Dublin for Day of Infamy in January misdemeanors and waiting to self-surrender, I told my public defender I was freaked out to be sentenced to a prison known for being a quote-unquote R club. She said, it's like that at all female prisons, a horrifying response. Yeah, you think? And this is, she posts the link to the article here that we're going to bring up. Women's prison in Dublin, nicknamed the R Club. But first, let me go to her other thread here. She says, I was housed for, again, the Day of Infamy misdemeanors at FCI Dublin, where several staff SA'd female inmates and retaliated against those who reported what was happening to them. That is something that is very important for people to understand, that at these facilities, you are going to be subjected to this. And if you do anything, if you try to say anything, if you try to even tell anybody on the phone, they retaliate against you. They will take away your privileges, they'll take away your commissary, and they'll put you in the shoe. And the bad things are still going to happen to you, but you're going to be punished even more for trying to alert other people to what is happening to you. And this is interesting also because at the same time that we have this situation going on with FCI Dublin, the Bureau of Prisons is trying to change their rules. They already have zero outside oversight. Their media requirements are such that independent media can't get in to these places to provide any kind of real oversight, and the mainstream media just doesn't do it. And so they're already operating in this area of having nobody on the outside paying attention to what they're doing. And they now want to change the law so that inmates incarcerated aren't allowed to have somebody on the outside that basically posts for them on social media. So they want to prevent inmates from alerting the outside world and the broader public to what is happening to them inside these facilities. And then when you look at stories like this, you go, gee, I wonder why. Perhaps it's because everything that is happening at these facilities is horrific and horrendous, and if the public actually knew, things would have to change immediately. a judge finally appointed a special master to conduct oversight. What should also be noted is that is the first time in the entire history of the BOP itself that a special master had been assigned to conduct oversight of reforms. So they were supposed to be reforming FCI Dublin with a special master to do oversight. This is somebody from outside of the BOP to come in and do oversight, a first in BOP history. So what happens? Rather than allow an outside person to come in and see what's happening and to oversee reforms of these places, what they do instead is the BOP decides to shut the prison down to eliminate any chance at any type of oversight, despite the horrific things that has happened at the facility. Much respect, she says, to the courageous inmates who spoke out against their SAs by staff despite the retaliation that they faced. I hope to never stop giving them a bigger voice. This is an article about the same prison. I got a job as an orderly at the FCI Dublin chapel. The replacement chaplain and I arrived at Dublin the same day. This would have been October 17th, 2023. He was kind to the inmates and humanized us with conversation and eye contact, which is rare in a prison environment. It's disturbing to know the abuse others suffered in those same chapel halls. I worked in this office daily, the same office where the now incarcerated former chaplain manipulated and assaulted my fellow inmates. In witness statements, women described High House doing inappropriate things to them, offering his chaplain office as an S-den, and telling them Bible stories to manipulate them into engaging in this inappropriate activity. This was the closet I got supplies from every morning. I can envision the wall the former chaplain pushed her into. It's sickening to think of the Eighth Amendment violations that occurred in that closet and how they were covered up. This is again referencing the article. This is how in prison is covered up. It's a long but accurate and important read. The omnibus sound of keys enabling SA in prisons. This is actually a link to a research paper about this. You can see that here. But anyways, let's move on to the actual article that she was referencing. This was just published 2 days ago, Powerless in Prison, the Shutdown of FCI Dublin. And we're going to go through this article because this is actually very important. You guys know this is a topic that I care a lot about. One morning last month, Kendra Drysdale heard other women screaming and crying. I came out of my cell and said, "What's going on?" She recalled in an interview with KTVU. They said, "Look at the news," and all the channels on the news were going across the bottom. The news was that BOP Director Colette Peters abruptly announced on April 15 the troubled Federal Correctional Institute at Dublin, a low-level women's prison, would close immediately. At first blush, some people cheered the news because it had been scandal-plagued, but on deeper reflection, others noted this would be bad for the 605 incarcerated women there. They would now be transferred out of California, making family visits much harder. And for the first time in BOP history, a special master had been appointed to oversee improving conditions for the actual inmates there, for the women that are at this facility. What happened was devastating. Right when we felt safe, we felt hope. There was going to be major changes, but the rug was completely pulled out from underneath us. Her thoughts and observations offer a rare glimpse into how FCI Dublin operated before the shutdown and immediate aftermath, including accusations of correctional officers shredding documents before the doors closed, to demeaning and hasty journeys on buses to other prisons across the United States. That is all in addition to the sexualized culture woven into the history of FCI Dublin, where 7 correctional officers have been sentenced to prison for S crimes, and an 8th officer is heading to trial, also likely to be convicted. Peter's surprise shutdown proclamation came 10 days after U.S. District Court Judge Yvonne Gonzalez Rogers named Special Master Wendy Still to make changes and to ensure, finally, some reforms at FCI Dublin, the first such oversight in BOP history. That appointment followed a February visit to the prison by Gonzalez Rogers, the judge, who was overseeing a class action lawsuit against the prison, and ordered the outside oversight. After speaking to dozens of women and touring the facility for 9 hours, the judge called the facility a dysfunctional mess, even after BOP promised things were, quote, different now, and that the bad actors had all been charged and sentenced for a variety of horrific crimes. Peters acknowledged she couldn't turn the prison around, despite sending resources there, and in subsequent documents, Warden Nancy McKinney argued in court documents the closure of FCI Dublin, also riddled with mold and asbestos, had been a long time coming. But noting the timing of the special master appointment and prison closure, some are wondering if the closure was payback for oversight. Yes. So why was this decision made? U.S. Representative Mark Day Saulnier asked, was it in retaliation in some form or fashion? I would suggest it was. Since the prison closed so suddenly, the majority of women were taken away in the middle of the night to prisons elsewhere across the country. This is obviously bad for the women and their families. Some of these women are married, they have children who will not be able to visit them now, or it's going to be much harder because they're going to have to travel across the country. When the women asked where they were going, a mother who asked to be called Esther told KTVU in an email, quote, they were told none of your business. SFTU, this is why Dublin is closing. You all need to learn to keep your mouths shut. I gave up my Saturday to move you guys. And then they called them names. They said because these women told the truth about what was happening, they're now all going to face retaliation. Okay, let's see. In a memo obtained, the BOP director commended her staff for the, quote, tireless efforts in facilitating the successful transition, praising their dedication while being, quote, sensitive to the needs of those in our care. What a joke. They were literally, mistreating the people in their care in a horrific way. I don't know why she would say that. And even people who worked at the facility were against shutting it down. They said it was not all of these people, not all of the officers. Some of the officers, the union boss said, even tried to stop other officers, from harming or abusing inmates. They said that the ability shouldn't close. It was being rehabilitated with the world watching. And so they're saying, why shut it down? Why not allow it to be reformed and allow it to have the outside oversight? Some women had been released because apparently the BOP was not counting their credits for time served. They gave us hope for the first time since I've been in BOP. All those women really seemed to be compassionate. They made us feel like there were going to be some changes. She said a laundry list of complaints against how she was treated, from not getting proper medical care for kidney stones to what she describes as retaliation for reporting being groped by an officer in September 2023. Officers filed a report against her, claiming she falsified an allegation, took away her phone privileges, her visits, her job in the prison, and her commissary. So that's retaliation for reporting an inappropriate incident. She accuses BOP of not properly giving women credits for time served. I believe they're doing that to everybody. Her attorney said she actually should have been released last February. Drysdale made the allegation when the prison closure was announced. Officers, quote, immediately started shredding documents like bags and bags of documents. She said people's compassionate release forms were shredded and good behavior credits. Anything positive in our files was no longer there. Other employees and women have reported this shredding as well. BOP's spokesperson, responding to the allegation, said that would be serious misconduct if true. Okay, these are some of the victims, by the way. They have been speaking with survivors from FCI Dublin, amplifying the voices of women inside the prison. Despite being declined tours of the facility, they've heard from over 100 women by email, phone, video, in person, and in court, all with similar stories of being SA'd or witnessing this SA, and when they reported it, they were ignored or retaliated against, losing privileges and being put in special housing units. This is, and it goes on to talk about how awful this is. So I want to now play a clip of the BOP director, Colette Peters. We're going to end it on this because I want you to hear from her herself what she thinks about this, basically.
The last.
Okay, so let's just move forward here.
Now, an update of our story, Agency in Crisis, about the Federal Bureau of Prisons, particularly its women's prisons. This past Monday, FBI agents raided one of them, FCI Dublin, in Northern California. So notorious for sexual abuse and retaliation against those who speak up, it is known as the Rape Club. We asked Bureau of Prisons Director Colette Peters,
listen to what she says,
if the government owes the inmates more than a safe environment.
Is your job to apologize for what happened in Dublin?
I don't know that my job is to apologize. Is it heartbreaking and horrendous to have something like that happen when you are proud of your profession as a corrections professional? Absolutely.
The Bureau.
Wow, she doesn't know if it's her job. This is the facility, by the way. I just wanted to show some other pictures here. I want to show you some pictures of the women being moved, actually. And these are the scumbag perpetrators, by the way. This is the warden, who was also a perpetrator, and these are the victims. This is the FBI raiding FCI Dublin, by the way, but I don't think anything's going to happen. I think the FBI is there to cover up the evidence. So I'd like to close by thinking of the victims there at FCI Dublin, and really all of the other people who are suffering abuse and mistreatment inside these prisons, which we know is a lot. That's all I have for you guys today. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this.